right, babies, it's that time again. We're in Isaiah 16, but I didn't feel like it today, so I went straight to the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, chapter 120. And there we find Jesus being questioned by someone saying, "Hey, Jesus, is there any way of working with the Pharisees and finding common ground with them as you present your ideas of the kingdom?" And Jesus says, no. And he uses as an example that the new wine that he represents has to be contained in new vessels. And that if you try to mix the two, it's not going to work. You're going to have a cognitive dissonance of sorts. Which is interesting because I was just, we're going to segue a little bit into the Gospel of Frank, Gospel according to Frank. And yesterday I was talking to one of my students because he came in and he was like, first thing out of his mouth, he's like, never read philosophy just before going to bed. And I said, well, that depends. The philosophy is a wide-ranging field. And he just kind of mentioned something was so challenging to him that his mind couldn't rest. And so I happened to look down on the floor, and there by my desk was a bunch of wires that connect to a smart board. And they're all like tangled because I wasn't using it, so it was just kind of in disuse. But if you looked at it, it was like, oh my gosh, what's this mess? And so I told him, I said, I often found it useful when I'm thinking of philosophy, that I think of it as an untangling of cords that we've allowed in our minds to be unattended, so that as we're bringing in new ideas, we're not adjusting older ideas to welcome the existence of the new idea, so the two can either synthesize to a new realm and understanding, or the old one has to be expunged, or that the new one is just not good enough because it's not aligning with what you already have determined is useful. So I kind of use that visual of these tangled cords as an image of what we do in our lives by not taking the time to make the necessary changes to receive new information. And so I think that's similar to what Jesus is saying about the wineskins and you can't put new wine in old wineskins because it'll burst. It's got to be put in a container that's going to expand with the new thought. So that was his answer to, no, you can't just align what I'm saying, because what I represent is so different than what the Pharisees are representing. You can't put the two together, otherwise you're going to get that cognitive dissonance. So, why is that? What's so different about, the Pharisees represented the law. The law was given by God, so they say. And the practices that were developed were based on the law given by God. And Jesus came to fulfill the law. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is twofold. I think in one regard, the law, in some aspects, was not given by God. It was actually created by man, humanity, in its image of what God wants us to be. And in the case of laws that were handed down by God, such as, love the Lord with all your heart, all your mind, have no other gods but the one God. That you can hold and synthesize with the new wine of Jesus. But how the Pharisees were teaching people to love God was through over 500 different rituals and demands that if they weren't followed, there was exacting punishment, and in some cases death. And so Jesus was saying, you guys are missing the point. And so I'm here to show you what the proper way is. And the proper way is to be in relationship with God and to be that empty vessel, so that He, in all of His accurate attributes and expectations of us, allowed to be expressed through us fluidly, so that we serve each other wholeheartedly, as opposed to Pharisees who would pray publicly and make sure everybody saw that they were praying, so that they could see how holy they were and how they were adhering to God's law to pray. And if you notice, we've got a lot of Christians today who just love to take that microphone and be heard in a way that it doesn't ring true. I'm not saying you can't use a microphone. Here I'm using this format to give you a message, but I'm not saying, hey, look at me, I'm so great. No, I am saying, look at me, Jesus is great. And if you follow Jesus's words, you can have the power too, and you can do it without following a bunch of rules and regulations which you think are pleasing God. What pleases God is your heart completely in love with Him.